Hi, everyone. My name is Ashley Colazzo, and I'm going to present my case study one. So let me start the slideshow. The description of the client that I'll be talking about is a 4-year-old female. She was diagnosed with autism back in 2021. And the behavior of concern that we're going to be looking at is yelling or screaming. And just for the purposes of this project, I'll just refer to her as Sally. Um, so as far as the negative and positive reinforcement contingencies, Cooper defines reinforcement as a functional relation between a stimulus change immediately following a response and an increase in the future of occurrence of similar responses. And we used a functional behavior assessment to determine the potential reasons for why she displayed the yelling and screaming behaviors. So the operational definition that I came up with for yelling and screaming is when the client emits any vocalization in a volume above conversational level without permission. So for example, if she yells after I place a command, that would be considered the target behavior, or a non-example would be like if she falls on the ground or she gets hurt and she yells out in pain. We discovered that the reasons for the problem behavior are both attention and escape. So, like if she yells, let's say she wants to gain somebody's attention, whether it be me, the BCBA, or someone in the clinic, she would have a tendency to yell instead of like appropriately asking or appropriately gaining somebody's attention. Or she would use it as a form of escape. So if I placed a demand on her, like, hey, it's time to go brush your teeth, she would just scream to basically get out of trying to follow through with demand. And as far as the intervention that we used a DRL, or differential reinforcement of lower rates of behaviors. And according to Cooper, a definition of DRL is a schedule of reinforcement in which reinforcement follows each occurrence of the target behavior that is separated from the previous response by a minimum inter-response time. And so I took a little picture of the chart that we use for her. I did blur out her name in the chart, but so basically what we do is we set a timer at the beginning of the session for 30 minutes. And for those 30 minutes, if she displays two or more instances of yelling, she does not get the reinforcement. And the reinforcement that we chose for her is 10 minutes of free time. So we let her know, like, oh, if you don't yell during this time, you get 10 minutes of free time to where you can choose whatever you want to do for those 10 minutes. And and then we put an X at the bottom, like at the bottom where it has the two rectangles. We would put an X anytime that she yelled. So if she got two or more X's, we would tell her, like, we would just show it, like whenever we would mark the X, we'll just show it to her. We won't actually like say anything. We'll just show her like us marking the X on the paper. So she sees like, you know, you yelled, so you get an X. Um, and then at the end of the 30 minutes, if she did get an X, we would just mark an X up in the top box where it says interval 30 minutes. Or we would mark a check if she didn't display any behaviors or two or less instances of screaming, and then she would get her 10 minutes of free time. And so the outcome, the intervention decreased the occurrence of the target behavior. Before the intervention was set in motion, she was yelling an average of about 15 times a day. And the intervention has been in place for about 2 months now, and now she averages about 2 screams a day. One of the obstacles that we encountered was vocalizing to the client why she was receiving an X on the chart each time she yelled. So basically, in the beginning, whenever we would mark an X on the chart, we would immediately tell her, like, oh, Sally, this is why you're getting an X. You're not keeping a normal voice. You're being too loud. So whenever we would like vocalize that to her, it would just lead to back and forth conversation. Like it would lead to her like either questioning, like, why did I get an X? Why? Or like it would just lead to back and forth, or it would make her yell even more. Like there were times where I would tell her, like, you just got an X because you were being loud. She would immediately start yelling again. And that was happening like very, very often, almost every time that we would tell her that she got an X. So we revamped that part and decided to not say anything when we give her an X. We just visually show her like us marking the X on the paper. Like we make sure that she sees it so she understands why she's getting an X, because we would do it like right after she would scream. But then we would put the clipboard away. Like we wouldn't say anything about it. And that helped a lot because once we started doing that, like she wasn't like screaming as soon as we showed her the X, or she would immediately like start using her quiet voice again. And then the original intervention consisted of a punishment procedure in which she was shown a rating scale each time she yelled. So we had this big chart that was numbered from 0 to 5. And number 3 was considered like normal inside voice. And then 4 and 5 was considered yelling. And so whenever she would yell, we would have her put like a little paper clip on the number that corresponded to the volume of her voice. So if she was yelling, I would say, oh, you got to put the paper clip on number 4 because you are having a loud voice right now. And she would put the paper clip on number 4. And then when she would come back down to like a normal voice, we would have her put the paper clip on number 3, the normal voice. And so that was becoming an issue because anytime we did that, she would just start yelling even more. Like it just wasn't working with her for some reason. Um, I personally think it's because with that procedure, there wasn't really like reinforcement that came with it, at least not reinforcing to her. Um, because like if she did have a normal voice, all we would do is say like, oh, put the paper clip on number 3, like great job. Like we would give her vocal praise. That was like the extent of the reinforcement for her for that procedure. Um, but we just didn't think vocal praise was enough for her. So that's why we believe that didn't work. So that's why we revamped the intervention and decided to try this other way of the DRL, with the reinforcement being 10 minutes of free time every 30 minutes. And that has worked amazingly because she loves her free time. She loves being able to do whatever she wants. So it's worked really well. And that is my reference. So yeah, that was the entire project. Thanks for watching.